Hello, 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 folks. This is Darth checking in with you again today. So I want to give a thank you to everybody who's subscribing to me, following, chatting with me in comments section. Oh, that's just going to look like that, I guess. Chatting with me in comment sections, everything. I appreciate you guys and your interaction. This is a lot of fun. This is a fun time right now. So, today, what I'm talking about, I'm working on stuff for episode 4, doing a big breakdown on it. But today, what I'm talking about, I want to hit on some of the highlights from an AMA that the showrunner Rafe Judkins did the day before Thanksgiving. Because he said a number of really interesting things that I think for me, it just eased all of my concerns and worries and doubts about the show. Between that and episode 4, which I'm not going to spoil at all in this video, I felt like if at this point, if you're complaining once you hear these things, if you still have problems, that's you. That's on you at this point. So I'm going to cover those, and when you guys hear it, I hope that it will help you if you're struggling with the way the show has gone so far, and that it will ease for you that we are in good hands. So I'm going to jump in here. I'm not going to talk about nearly everything that he said. I've got about a quarter of it tabbed out here, and we're just going to go through it. And yeah. So here we go. Big important things here. So Rafe's first question that he answers, he got asked if he knew that there were going to be drastic changes to characters and settings whenever he signed up to be the showrunner. And he responded, by the way, the person, I'm super paraphrasing, they were kind of antagonistic about it. He responded, "We may have said 1,000 times that this is not a one-for-one adaptation and another turning of the wheel. It simply is. I hope that you'll still enjoy it, though, or that if you don't, you can go back to the books and read them again. They make for a great reread." So he responded kind of in kind there, but he's defending his work. I can't blame him for being a little on the defensive about that. And, you know, as somebody who kept up with the production of it for 2 years, they did say it's another turning of the wheel, it's going to be different, etc. I think that even hearing that, I was surprised at how different, but they have been saying that. That is true. And by the way, I kind of categorized all these, so that way you'll get the same sort of information. So this is overarching, like, show and production questions first. He was asked, he said, thanks for making my favorite series come to life. I know you're balancing all the feedback you're getting, da 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 da. Let's see. And how do you choose what information to use for feedback and what information to not use? And he said, I think the worst showrunners are either insecure or oversecure. You'll either not listen to anything at all, or you can listen to absolutely everything. I try to value the people around me and their artistic input, but I also stick true to what I believe is the right way to pull this off long term. He does have a vision. He does have an outline for all 8 seasons. It's important to know that. He got asked, what is your opinion on a book-to-series adaptation taking too many liberties in regards to a story? And he said, you can never make something that's like most people pictured it. That's the beauty of books. We all have our own personal vision in our heads, and it gets broken down a bit by watching it adapted. For me, I prefer an adaptation that tries to utilize its medium to tell the story best. Like, I prefer Azkaban to the first couple of Harry Potters. Yeah, I think that shows through in the show so far, and so long as we're still hitting the right beats, which episode 4 definitely made me feel like we are, in a different way, and so long as we keep it in our head that it is a different turning of the wheel, I think that that's very accurate and very faithful in its own right as an adaptation. It's a good, okay way to go about it. I'd even say a good way, because it keeps everything on its toes, right? So, let's see. My question is about mapping out the series. Do you have an overall structure to the series envisioned? Yes, I have an overall idea, but that's affected in a big way by a couple of key things: the number of episodes per season and actor availability. A lot of changes we've had to make to my initial plan for the show have been based on those two things. Interesting. Interesting. So, some of the other things that I've pulled out here, I can't even talk today. Some of the other things that I've pulled out will mention this, but there are actually a lot of constraints that Rafe is under when making this show, and I'll give some other quotes that exemplify that in a minute. But the ability to get everybody together at the right time, to do it within certain time constraints. We know now that Amazon would not allow him to do an hour and a half episode one or a 10 episode first season. And that's why the first episode felt kind of chopped and a little bit rushed. But, you know, trying to balance all of those things and tell the story and translate something as beloved as the Wheel of Time into another medium, there are a lot of things that play into why changes are made. It's not arbitrary, people. And that's a big point here. Okay, so here we go. My biggest concern for the series is that it will move too fast, just like Game of Thrones Season 8 did. Do you have a plan to make sure that the seasons will feel fully fleshed out by the time they end and not rushed? Rafe said, "Yeah, it was certainly a worry of mine that the show moves too fast, but I think that hopefully that will give momentum to non-readers as they go through some of the stuff that's more similar to other fantasy projects and start to dip into the really unique Wheel of Time stuff. Throughout season 1 as well, we always try to find times to stop down and check in with the characters emotionally, as that's the most important thing to understanding the show." Again, if you've watched episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can see that in spades, especially as we're getting on. That first episode, they had so many boxes to check. Next question here. One of the biggest complaints I've seen regarding the premiere is the pacing of episode 1. It's reported that you wanted/expected a 10-episode season and a 2-hour pilot, so it's understandable why it had to be so cram-packed when cut down to only 1 hour. Is there any possibility of a Judkin's cut being released later on? Rafe said, I wish, but the Judkin's cut never really made it out of script form, and to Amazon's credit, a real focus in streaming nowadays for all the networks is pace and bingeability. Anecdotally, tons of non-book fans made it through the first episode and right into the series without stopping down or turning it off. Maybe in the next turning of the wheel, there will be a 2-hour season premiere featuring unlimited scenes of smithing, Coplands, congers, and more. Interesting here. It almost sounds like he agrees with the fandom and wanted more out of it, but he's just basically telling us it is what it is. That's very interesting to me. And there are a couple of other comments on that I've kind of alluded to here. I recommend you go check out the AMA for them. I went ahead and started moving forward into other things. That way I didn't make this too long. But here we go. What was the rationale behind not having the cold open of the first episode be the original Eye of the World prologue? Rafe said, "We had a lot of different versions of how to start the show, but my personal opinion was that we couldn't really see this cold open until Luz Theron was ready to play a more significant role in the show." I can't even argue with that. How ridiculous would it be to cast an actor for the part of Luz Theron, and it has to be the same actor later on, or it's going to be really weird, right? How ridiculous would it be to cast them in that role and them not pop up again for 4 years? For that to make sense on TV, you would have to do so very much differently. It just, yeah, I get that completely. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get that cold open until around season 4, season 5. It would really be great if we got that cold open at the start of the season where Rand's madness starts to develop more. So like the Lord of Chaos time, I think, and especially it needs to be after he walks through the Ruidian glass columns that first time. I think that would make a lot of sense. Okay, so Brandon Sanderson said you and him have agreed on most of the changes except one. Can you tell us what it is? And Rafe said, I think there's been more than that, but Brandon's been amazing through this whole process. He's such a great collaborator, and I'll be dead honest when I say I do more of his notes percentage wise than any other single human involved with the show. Again, people, he's answering everything right. This was a really candid AMA. I think that it strongly shuts down a lot of the objections people have had because it shows us that his heart and head are in the right place on running the show. This is a fan-led production. And I can't imagine listening to somebody more than Brandon Sanderson or Harriet McDougal when it comes to trying to create anything Wheel of Time related. Hell, when it comes to anything fantasy related, if you don't listen to Brandon Sanderson, you're an idiot, you know? That just is what it is. Okay, so let's get more specific in our changes here. Rafe, big fan of your adaptation. Whose idea was it to have Perrin be married in the first episode? He says, well, firstly, in the longer version of the script, I'd had Perrin be the apprentice to the town blacksmith who he then accidentally killed during the first Trolloc attack. In Brandon Sanderson's notes, Brandon stated that he had encouraged Rafe to use Harrow Luhan in that same role, and that would have kickstarted his character development. Rafe himself says in the longer version of the script, the one that Amazon axed, that's what he had. It was really important to me that he have an iconic moment of violence in the first episode that would underpin his long-term journey with violence, and whether he'd choose the axe or the hammer. And then he says, as we had to trim a bunch of page length down in the scripts, it became a simpler story to tell it as his wife, and also felt natural that if these characters were in their early 20s in a small mountain village, one of them likely would be married. There's a scene in the books where Perrin talks about if he'd stayed in the Two Rivers, he might have married Layla Dern, and voila, Layla was born. I can't even argue with this, people. If you need to, in 3 scenes, show us that these characters are connected, make them husband and wife, have him put his hand on her belly, make them wake up in bed together, have them share a little quiet moment, and then have him kill her. That's easier than trying to explain the relationship between Harrow Luhan, and if you've only got an hour and you know that character's going to get dead in the first hour, there you go. That's basically it. Right? So even that giant change, there's a perfectly rational explanation right there. Okay, so Rafe, I'm sure you've seen a lot of the fans of the books had concerns about the changes. However, a main one seems to be that a woman can be the dragon. I love this answer. Why was this change made if the dragon is going to be the same anyways, as it changes a lot in the world Jordan created? Quote unquote, the change we made was not just with the fact that a woman could be the dragon. The core change that we made is that people are not 100% convinced that these 3,000-year-old prophecies are totally accurate. I think it feels a little more true to the world, and you can see characters questioning the prophecies of the dragon and the details of it much more in the show than in the books. It seems quite trusting for the Aes Sedai who trust no one, and especially Moraine, who trusts less than no one, to believe with 100% certainty that to believe with 100% certainty anything that was written thousands of years ago. Okay. That just shut down an entire column of criticism. Let's see here. Hey, Rafe, thank you. When you decide something can't make it into the show where it was in the books, how do you approach bringing it to the show later in some form? He said, There's actually a bunch of stuff in book 1 that we hit in season 2 already. They're filming right now. And things from books 2 and 3 that we have plans to hit later if we're lucky enough to get there. I think when you're adapting it as a series and have so many production/budgetary constraints, you have to be prepared to remix things a little. It's sadly rare that we can do a scene from the books with the same characters in the same place, saying the same lines at the same moment as in the books. Often one of those things has to be swapped out. This goes right back to his talking about production, folks. It's just changes that have to be made because of all the constraints that they're under when they're making a TV show. Okay, now this gets fun. This gets fun. I love this next little bit here. This is kind of my next section. Rafe, is there a particular reason you chose to exclude what Tam says to Rand during his fever dream, or why you didn't show Rand traveling back to town from their farm after the attack? His response, did we? That's all he said. I loved pairing that with that previous comment, and it goes along with this next one as well. Do you think you missed a chance to make a really iconic episode set in Shadar Logoth? It's my favorite section of Eye of the World, and it felt like it shouldn't have been rushed over as you skipped Mordith, the Myrddraal forcing Trollocs inside, and even Padden Fane's experience there. Instead, it felt rushed and disappointing all around. Rafe said, did we skip all those things? Folks, stuff is getting rearranged. They can't tell all the story the way that it gets told in the books. Not without slowing down and chopping up the pacing of the show, delaying introducing people to characters, delaying experiences, delaying getting to know our main cast. This is as close to confirmed as we can get that these things are going to show up later on. Okay. Here's another one. This is a little different. He got asked why the CGI went up and down, and he said that COVID has been very tough on the VFX department because they couldn't review things as they normally would. Okay. And he then gets a question that asks him if there are multiple Forsaken, to which he just says yes. And a follow-up question, how did you come up with your designs for the Forsaken? Fan art, book descriptions, or your own personal depiction on how they would look and feel? To which he said all of the above. He's not chopping out the Forsaken. I don't know where that even came from. Here's another one. Here's another critique that people have had. People have been terrified that the One Power got merged into One Power, which it always was One Power, but I understand there's two sides of it, a male and a female half. This person asks him a question about that. He tells them, you will hear the word Sidene this season. There are still a male and a female half to the One Power. I'm telling you, folks, this interview killed it. It just checked all the boxes. Rafe got asked, this is the last few things here. Four left here. If you had to choose one scene from the first book to film almost exactly how Jordan wrote it, which one would you choose? He said, if it were just me making the show for myself, I'd honestly do the whole Perrin and Egwene, Raven, Steading, Elias sequence. That really hooked me to the books for the first time. He was asked, it was said, I've read the books over 30 times, loving the show so far. I have way too many questions, da-da-da-da-da. This person rambled. What is your favorite scene in the books, the one you're most looking forward to putting on camera? Dumais Wells. Yeah, us too, Rafe. Us too. And he also got asked, do you have a particular moment in the series you're looking forward most to adapting? And he said, if I can navigate us to the end, that would be the dream. And then one other question that somebody had to him, do you have a favorite character arc in the book? And he said, Egwene breaking the tower from within. Not sure if that's a spoiler, but yes, this. So, folks, just to recap here, this really assuages a lot of the criticisms and concerns that people have had about Rafe Judkin's and Amazon's ability to adapt the series. I think that if you still have concerns, I'd really encourage you to go check out this AMA in full. And moving forward, I expect that by season 2 or 3, we're going to have so many people following this show that is going to be an old, small voice, that percentage of people that still finds complaints there. All right, guys, y'all have a great evening.